All right, so previously on the book of Shmuel, part Bet, we saw the Return of the King, where David meets again with many of the cast of characters he encountered when he had to flee before Avshalom. We spoke about his misjudgment with Mephiboshet and Tzibah at the end, and we saw that David's efforts to reunite the nation by appointing Amasa as the head of the army were insufficient to prevent, we'll call it, the beginnings of internal strife. Tribes are once again acting tribal, with bickering over who gets to be closer to the king, being an example of the simmering unrest that will erupt into another rebellion in this chapter as a preview of coming attractions. So we are going to start Parak Chaf, chapter 20, in earnest. The Sham, and there was a man who was Nikra Ish Bilyal, a lawless person, Ushmo, and his name was Sheva ben Bichri. Okay.
There's word blial.
Yeah, that's a great word to stop on. Where do we have it before?
It's in Shoftim a lot, right?
It's in the beginning of Sefer Shmuel. The sons of Eli were Bnei Blial. We had it also, I think, by Shaul was talking about some of the people who were Bnei Blial.
Blial means like without something.
Bliol, like they didn't have like that's one of the Mephiboshet, but it's lawless. It's people who have no morals. So this Ben Blial is Sheva ben Bichri, and he is an Ishimini. So right away we start seeing sort of the more tribalism showing up again, and the unrest here is specifically from Binyamin. Yitka b'shofar, and he blows the shofar, which usually signifies the end of hostilities, but here it's the beginning of hostilities. Vayomer ein lanu chelik b'David v'lo nachala lanu b'ben Yishai. We have no portion in David, and we're not part of the inheritance of Ben Yishai. This is a way of kind of disowning any connection to David. Ish lo alav Yisrael, everyone to your own, each man for himself. That's it. We're not aligned with David anymore. And this is an outgrowth of what we saw at the end of the previous parak, where all of the different Shvatim, we'll call them Bnei Yisrael versus Bnei Yehuda. Bnei Yisrael were indignant that the Bnei Yehuda were so close to David, and they were escorting David, and we want a portion, and there was conflict there between the rest of the nation and David's own Shevet, and now people are kind of responding. Yeah, well, they're responding to this tribalism that Sheva ben Bichri is kind of putting his finger on. Vayal kol ish Yisrael me'acharei David acharei Sheva ben Bichri. And now all the Kol Yisrael, everyone, they leave. They forsake David and they go after Sheva ben Bichri, v'ish Yehuda, davku b'malkam. And the men of Yehuda, they cling to their king. Min ha'yardain vad Yerushalayim, who they accompanied from the Yardain to Yerushalayim in the last parak. Vayavo David el beito Yerushalayim. And David, this is sort of a recap. He came back to Yerushalayim. V'kach hamelech es eser nashim pilagshim asher hiniach lishmor habayit v'yitneim biyad mishmeret v'yikalkaleim. So he remember that Avshalom, as part of his rebellion, the advice of Achitophel was to sleep with David's concubines, who David had left back in the castle, and that's what Avshalom did. So now, what does David do with these concubines? Answer: He takes the Tempi Lagshim and v'yitneim biyad mishmeret. He puts them basically in their own like harem. V'yikalkaleim, and he supports them. V'alehem lo ba. But he's not intimate with them. The Tiyanet Tzrurot ad Yom Mutan, and they are therefore they're tied to him. They're connected to him until their death. Almunot Chayot. They're living widows, right? They are not able. He's not divorcing them, but he's also not acting as a husband with them. He's still providing them food and clothing and everything else, but he can't continue to be intimate with them after someone else had been.
Problems, okay.
Even if they did divorce, I don't think they can't really marry anybody else because they were married to the king.
Okay.
I think so.
Why?
Because I don't think you can marry anybody that's married.
Right? Can you never use the king's property?
Yeah. I think it's
Correct. I think you're exactly right. When we get to Malachim Aleph, we'll see that one of the ways of asserting your own kingship is to marry the wife or the widow or some woman who had been connected to the king.
Right.
That's a way to kind of so he can divorce them in that they won't be married to him, but yes, I don't think
anybody anyway. So
right.
It's just point. So this way he's taking care of them.
Right, but it's like So the thing is though, if they were forced, then that doesn't prevent the king from being with him, does it?
No, I don't believe it does.
Right. So that's the question, right? I mean, and not for nothing. I mean, I'm just saying, like, it's kind of like it's a very difficult position for the king because, like, if he gets back with them, they could be like, people could make taunts at him, like.
Yeah, he had no reason to be with them. He doesn't need them.
That's an interesting question.
Why is he even appointed to?
That's also an interesting question.
Why doesn't he what?
So Shimi's pointing out Pasuk Aleph and Beis are like, there is a rebellion going on, and the Jewish people are divided. And last time there was a rebellion, it almost came to civil war. By the way, David has these concubines, and like,
you remember the
concubines? What about the war? What about the rebellion? Right? We're going to come right back to that in a minute. But this is a very awkward interlude from all the tension that we were building up. How does this fit in to that? I think that's an excellent question. So I think we have to first deal with the halachic issue, which is, doesn't David still have an obligation to provide them with marital intimacy?
Right. That was the next thing.
So Pilegesh has the same halachos as a wife, with the exception of there's no ksuba and there's no kiddushin. But my understanding in my limited halachic knowledge is that a Pilegesh, you still have the obligation of share ksus ve'ona. So the Yerushalmi and Sanhedrin takes up this question, and I'm going to read it to you, even though I don't profess to fully understand it. The Yerushalmi says as follows. This is Yerushalmi, Parak Beis, Mishnah Gimel. Ein nosin lo almanuso v'lo grushaso shehamelech. You cannot marry, as we just said, the almana or the grusha, the widow or the divorcee of the king. Al shem v'tiyan tsuroros ad yom musan. How does the Gemara prove that you can't? From the fact that we just read in this pasuk that the concubines are permanent almanot. Reb Yuda bar Pazi b'shem Reb Yochanan Malamish Haya David mikalosan umikashtosan machnisan lefanov b'chol yom v'omer liyitzro hara. So David would dress them up, would give them all kinds of makeup and jewelry, and he would bring them out before him, and he would fight with his yetzer hara, and he would say, "V'tave'enan davar ha'asur lach." You want this thing that's also to you. Chayecha shani mitavicha davar hamuter lach. Rabbanan Kesaran Amaros Asuros Mameshayu. So the Rabbanan from Caesarea, they say these women were absolutely forbidden to David. Uma kli hedyot shenishtamesh bohem hedyot asur lemelech lishtamesh bo. So a something that belongs to a common person, it's forbidden for the king to use it because it's not in keeping with the office of the king. Klei she'amelech shenishtamesh bohem hedyot. If how much more so if the king had his own private things that were taken by a commoner. So certainly the king can no longer use those things because it was used by a commoner, and therefore it's not in keeping with the status of the office of the king. That what that's really referring to is that the king doesn't do yibum. So if the king's brother has a wife and the brother dies and the wife is not, they didn't have any children, the king doesn't do yibum with the brother's wife.
And he doesn't do chalitza, right?
He doesn't do, right. So that's learned out through a kal v'chomer, right? The kal v'chomer is if he doesn't do yibum, then certainly he doesn't do this mitzvah of ona. So first of all, usually we don't say a kal v'chomer to uproot a pasuk from the Torah. You have an obligation. But the bigger problem that I have is that if I recall correctly, I think every single wife that we've talked about of David's was someone else's wife first. Right? We have Michal and Bathsheba and we Abigail. Right? These are all someone else's wives that David is now married to and has children with. Like it's very explicit that he had children with them. So I don't know how to explain that.
Talk about it?
I haven't seen anyone that addresses that question, so I'm going to unfortunately have to leave it as a question. Okay, so let's get back to the action, to Shimi's point. Vayomer Hamelech el Amasa. So if we recall from the last parak, Amasa was the general of Avshalom's army, And after Avshalom's rebellion was put down, David said, okay, you know how we can like get everyone kumbaya? Let me appoint Amasa. I'll kill two birds with one stone. I'll get rid of Yoav, who's been driving me nuts. I'll appoint Amasa in charge of my army, and that will bring everybody together. So his newly minted general is Amasa, and he has a rebellion. Great. This is exactly why I need a general. So Vayomer Melech El Amasa has Ekli es ish Yehuda shloshish yamim v'ata po amod. Go and call up the reserves, right? Remember, all of Yisrael went with Sheva ben Bichri. So the only people I can lean on over here for amassing my troops is from Yehuda. So go to Yehuda, get me all the troops I need to deal with this rebellion, and be back here in 3 days because we're going out to war. Now, I also have not seen anyone say anything like this, but this is exactly like the inverse of the advice that doomed Avshalom, right? Achitophel said, when you're pursuing the enemy, just go get him immediately. The second he declares rebellion, go after him, right? And the other advice that he got from the advisor whose name escapes me right now, not Yonah, was no, let's wait and amass troops, and right, that was the worst possible thing you could do. That's exactly what David is doing over here. But fine. So Amasa has a 3 day. He has a charge to show back up in 3 days after you've gotten all the troops.
Hushai the Arki.
Hushai, thank you. Vayelech Amasa lahazik es Yehuda. So Amasa goes to stir up the Yehuda soldiers. Vayochar min hamoed asher ya'ado, and he's delayed. There's a Korean sieve over here. Either he delayed or he was delayed. He didn't show up at the appointed time. No Amasa after 3 days. That does not bode well for a nervous David. We're going to hopefully get into why Amasa didn't show up after 3 days. But Vayomer David el Avishai. So David goes down the line. Okay, who's next in my army of nephews? It's Avishai, another Ben Surya. So he says to Avishai, Atah yera lanu Sheva ben Bichri min Avshalom. If we let this thing percolate, this Sheva ben Bichri guy is going to cause more problems than Avshalom ever did. This is bad news. We got to do something now. Atah kaches avdei adonecha. Go take, this is a very interesting phrase, go take the servants of Adonecha, your master. Now, it could be that he's referring to the king in third person, but what I think is more likely is that he's referring to Adonecha is Yoav. Go take the soldiers who we all know are still loyal to Yoav, because Yoav is the de facto general of the army over here. The reason this is so telling is because when Uriah Chiti is talking about Adoni Yoav, we said, oh, that's like Mor b'Malchus, right? But here, David is the one who's saying the exact same phrase. Go take Avdei Adonecha, uraduf acharav, and go run after Sheva ben Bichri. Pen mata lo arim betzuros. I don't want him to go into a fortified city. He'd seal enenu, and then he's going to be saved from us. He's going to avoid being captured. Vayetzu acharav anshe Yoav, and here very clearly the reference was to Yoav, because the men of Yoav now go out v'hakresi v'haplesi, and these are David's shock troops, his king's guard, v'chol hagiborim, and all the mighty warriors of David. Vayetzu Yerushalayim lirdof acharei Sheva ben Bichri. They leave Yerushalayim to go after Sheva ben Bichri.
What do you mean before we said Yoav was making David crazy?
Yoav, so Yoav has done many things that were, we'll say, contrary to the interests of David. The last thing we saw with Yoav was after David was mourning Avshalom, Yoav chews him out and says, "What's wrong with you? You're right." So Yoav doesn't always necessarily act as a subordinate to David. Sometimes he feels like he can order the king around.
On paper, they're still aligned.
On paper, they're on the same side. But David doesn't want to have anything to do with him if he can avoid it, and it looks like he's not going to be able to avoid it.
And Yoav is extremely politically and powerful and militarily powerful.
Yes.
They went. The men of Yoav. They followed Yoav, not Yoav's in control.
So we'll get to that. Yoav is almost in control right now. Avishai is supposedly still in control.
Okay, the Anshe Yoav went after him means Avishai, not after Yoav.
Yeah, that's how I would like to read it.
And also the crazy place we had earlier, the
yes, they ran away with David when he left Yerushalayim.
I thought somebody said that it might be
the Urim V'Tumim.
V'Tumim.
Right. So that's Chazal. It could, yeah. Chazal explained that the crazy place is a reference to the Urim V'Tumim. I don't know that it's always a reference to Urim V'Tumim. I don't know why they would take the Urim V'Tumim with them in this kind of situation.
But earlier in the book, we had it where when David
was running away, and the Aaron came with him, and the crazy, the placey.
There could have been there.
Yeah.
We've said that.
Okay, so give me 1 second. Okay. Haim im ha'even hagdola asher b'giv'on. So they are out looking for who? Shaved ben Bechri, right? Mm-hmm. So they go out to Givon. The Givon, you may recall, was where the troops of Ishbosheth met up with the troops of Yoav in Perak Bays. There was a big pool of water over there. So they're out in Givon, but here they're by a big rock, not by a big pool. And who do they come across? Amasa balifnehem. And now Amasa, the missing general, is there. In Givon, in front of them. Vayoav chagur mido levusho v'alav chagur cherev mitzumedes al masnav. Okay, I'm going to do the best I can to translate this. Yoav was wearing, so first of all, by the way, hey, Yoav is here. He's one of the troops. He's not leading the troops. He's one of the troops, because we said that they're following Avishai. So Yoav is there, and he's chagur mido levusho. He's wearing his army fatigues, right? And he also has a sword that's fastened to him, al masnav, on his shoulder, on whatever. It's he has the like strap
on his loins, and it's
oh, I'm sorry, on his waist, batara, and it's tara they have here as in his sheath, but it's really like wrapped with clothing. V'hu yatsa, and Yoav is now going out, I guess, to greet Amasa. Vatipol, and the sword falls because it was not fastened well. Right? That's the way I'm going to read this. I know there are Mephorshim that kind of see this more as like in those westerns where the guy has a gun up his sleeve and he pushes a button and the gun kind of pops out. That's not how I think this is playing out. Yoav is dressed in military fatigues. He has a sword that's kind of like loosely bound to him, and it falls out as he's going to approach Amasa. Vayomer Yoav la Amasa, Hashalomata achi, and Yoav greets Amasa. Is it peaceable with you, my brother? V'telchaz yad yemin Yoav, and bizkan Amasa linashaklo. So Yoav takes his right hand to grab Amasa and embrace him and give him a kiss. Last time we had the men of Ishbosheth with the men of Yoav. They were grabbing each other by the head, and it started as kind of play fighting, and it led to real fighting. So here, Yoav, right hand, going to give Amasa like a hug and a kiss. The Amasa lo nishmar b'cherev. Amasa's not paying attention to this sword that fell out. Right? There's a sword on the floor, and Yoav's got his right hand extended out to embrace Amasa. But lo nishmar b'cherev asher b'yad Yoav v'yakehu ba el hachomish. Yoav takes the sword that had fallen out with his left hand. Amasa's not paying attention to Yoav's left hand because nobody's a lefty. Everyone takes the sword with their right hand. So he doesn't guard himself while Yoav is there ostensibly to embrace him. V'yakehu ba el hachomish. And Yoav kills Amasa in the fifth rib, or through the armor, whatever we're going to translate. The
same spot where they had the play fighting.
Same spot where they had the play fighting. The same way that, remember, back then.
Avner also.
Avner killed. Avner killed. What's his name? The fast guy. Who's the nephew. Through the fifth rib, and then Yoav killed Avner through the fifth rib, and now Yoav is killing Amasa also through the fifth rib.
Right, because that's where the heart is.
Right, in a deceptive way. The way he killed Avner was also deceptive, right? It was sort of vayishpoch me'av arza, and he spills out his entrails to the ground. V'lo shanalo.
A little bit of a weird pasuk, because if the slice is through the fifth rib,
yeah. If it's through and then out,
yeah, like you're not really gonna be able to eviscerate somebody. Like you could come under the fifth rib
Okay.
You know, and then you got to slash through, and then you could eviscerate someone. But like through the fifth rib, like in between the fifth and sixth ribs, or the fourth and fifth, like like he'd have to stab downwards, and then like really just make a mess of it.
Right.
I mean, I'm just saying.
Interesting. Okay, thank you. I did not know how to picture that. The lo shanalo, and he didn't have to. He did it in one shot, right?
Right.
The lo
that's
shanalo.
the thing that. Right. That's the thing that bothers me about it. Because if he stabs him once and then he just, and then like boom, boom, boom,
right.
boom, boom.
He tried and quartered him. Then we're
right.
gonna
Like
understand.
okay, but like one shot to
spill his guts,
him, you know, rupture his heart and eviscerate him.
Okay.
That's tough.
I appreciate the anatomical analysis. And Amasa is now dead. And Yoav, who's now leading the pack, it's now Yoav and Avishai, even though Avishai was ostensibly the general. Everybody knows that Yoav is the real dude. So they've killed Amasa, and then they do nothing with his carcass. They do nothing with the deceased, the body of the deceased. They instead radaf acharei Sheva ben Bichri. They go run after Sheva ben Bichri. The ish amad alav minarei Yoav, and one of Yoav's henchmen over there is standing over this scene in utter shock. Vayomer mi asher chafetz b'Yoav u'mi asher leDavid acharei Yoav. Everybody, let's go follow Yoav. Amasa misgolel b'dam betoch hamesila, and Amasa is drenched in blood in the middle of the road. Vayar ha'ish ki amad, and this the Yoav henchman sees what's going on. That everyone's in utter shock. They can't move. And kol ha'am vayasev es Amasa min hamesila. So they drag Amasa out of the middle of the road. Hasadeh vayishlach alav beged, and they throw a tarp over him. Ka'asher ra'ah kol haba alav v'amad. A garment, sure. They toss a cloak on Amasa, and then that's it. They have him covered with this garment in the middle of the field. Once he was removed from the road, so avar kol ish acharei Yoav. Then everyone starts following Yoav l'irduv acharei Sheva ben Bichri, to go chase after Sheva ben Bichri. I could, I'll stop at the end for questions on this whole situation, but the one thing I will point out is we just last parak, or whatever, 2 parakim ago, Yoav kills Avshalom, right? Or has Avshalom killed. Avshalom was the big bad guy, right? Yeah. Even Avshalom, who they killed, at least they made some sort of monument. They did something with the body, right? This is complete and utter disregard for a mace. Whatever the reason that let's assume we'll work with the assumption that he killed.
I mean, he could say we have a command from the king. Okay, we're going after this guy. I've got a personal vendetta. I got
right. So then tell the other people, bury the dead. I'm going to get Sheva.
No, and you should say we'll get him when we get back. You know,
something
Maybe
other
that's
than
what he said.
Something other than no.
Chuck
he didn't say anything. He didn't even tell them to put a cloak. He took off. Yeah. He kills him and then takes off. He kills Avshalom, and he's like, okay, let's make a stone monument and let's have some sort of kavod hameis. Here, there's nothing, and it's so shocking that the other people are like, what do we do? Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay, we did that. Pasuk Yudalid vayavor kol shiftei Yisrael avela ubeis ma'acha v'chol haberim v'yikalu v'yavo af acharav. So there's a question here as to who is passing through all shiftei Yisrael. Is it Yoav and his men, or Sheva ben Bichri, and who is passing through all the tribes of Yisrael until they get to Avel, which is in Beis Macha, and all the Beirim, they pass through. Vayikalu, and they get together. Vayavo afacharav, and they follow him inside Avela. This is a fortified city.
Where are the Beirim? Like the well people?
I have no idea.
All the well people.
So now Sheva ben Bichri is holed up in a fortified city, which is exactly what David did not want to have happen, right? V'yavo v'yatsuru alav. So now they lay siege to this city of Avela, Bavela, Beis Macha, vayishbechu solala el ha'ir, and they start building a siege ramp to go attack the city. V'tamod bachel. V'chol ha'am asher es Yoav mashchisim lahapil hachoma. And so they have built up this ramp to go attack the city, and they start pulling apart the wall, the ramparts of the city, so that they can get into the city and kill Sheva ben Bichri. Vatikra isha chachama min ha'ir.
Is this the same one?
No, this is a different wise woman, probably a different wise woman. We don't know for sure, I guess, because she was in a different, she's from a different Sheva in a different city before. Maybe she migrated to Avela, I don't know. So out from the city comes a disembodied voice of a wise woman, Mina'ir, and she says, Shimu, Shimu, Imruna. She speaks like in verse. Imruna el Yoav, Karav adhena, Vadabera elecha. And she says, listen, tell Yoav to come over so that I can talk to him. Now, everyone's antenna should be going up because we know that the last time we saw someone getting too close to the wall of an enemy's city where there was a wise woman inside, that was, well, we had it in reference to Uriah. When Yoav was sending the messenger back to David to tell David that Uriah was killed, Yoav's like, you know what David's going to say? How could you be so stupid as to come close to the wall? Don't you know that Avimelech, in the times of Shoftim, there was a woman who dropped a thing off the tower and killed the people, right? So the moral of the story is Yoav knows very well that don't get too close to the wall of an enemy where a woman is concerned because you will end up dead. But here, the woman is calling him to come close to the wall, and that's exactly what he does. And he comes close to the wall, and the woman says, Ha'ata Yoav vayomer ani. Are you Yoav? Yes, I am. Remember, there's no yes in biblical Hebrew. You just reinforce the question. Vayomer ani. He says, I am. Vatomer lo. Shma divrei amasecha. Listen to the words of your servant. Vayomer shomei anochi. I'm listening. Give it to me. Vatomer lemor. And she says, saying, Daber daberu barishon lemor shaol yishalu ba'avel v'chein heitamu. And remember, once upon a time, people always used to say, let them ask about Avel, and that was the end. Everyone knew that Avel was a good place. Anochi shlume emune Yisrael. We are from the people who are of complete faith in Yisrael. Ata mevakesh lahamis ir. You're going to kill a whole city and the aim be Yisrael. Lama tivala nachlas Adonai. Why are you trying to destroy the nachla of Hashem? So she now has Yoav on the defensive. She's calling him a rasha, and she's telling him that what he's doing is excessive force, and he has to now justify himself. Vayan Yoav vayomer chalila li. That's God forbid that I should do such a thing. Ivala v'im ashchis, that I should destroy or ruin. I think avala here is a pun on the name Avela. Lo kain hadavar, no way. That's not at all my intention. Ki ish mehar Ephraim Sheva ben Bichri shmo. There's a guy from Har Ephraim. He used to be a Yemeni, but now he's from Har Ephraim. His name is Sheva ben Bichri shmo. Nasa yado b'melech b'David. He is rebelling. He's a Morer b'Malchus. He's raised his hand against the king, against David. Nuo so levado. Just give me him. Ve'elcha me'al ha'ir, and I will depart from the city. Vatomer Yisha el Yoav. Oh, no problem. Hine rosho mishulach elecha be'ad hachama. Give me 10 minutes and I'll throw his head over. End of story. Problem solved. Okay.
I love how casual it is.
Right. Oh, is that all?
Right. That's all you need?
Right. I'll be right back. I've got his head in a jar. Just give me. Okay. So there are many questions on this too. I don't know how much to cover.
My question is this woman the leader of the city? That's what I wonder. Like, because
could be.
Could she be like the mayor or the regent or whatever, that she actually has the power to do this? Like, listen, guys, okay, we got somebody in our midst. He's gonna, the army's at the outside. This guy's got to go. Okay, because historically speaking, just some rando who's like, hey, I just spoke to the general, and he says all this stuff. Like, who's going to believe this person unless she's like a very prominent person?
We have to believe she's prominent enough that Yoav was willing to cut. If some random lady says, bring me Yoav, we'll say, who are you?
It makes me believe, like, first of all, she's a wise woman, right? The fact that she's called by Tanakh wise, again, it's not indicated, but implies that she's the leader.
I think that's a fair assumption. V'tavo ha'isha el kol ha'am b'chachmata, and she comes back to all the people with her wisdom. V'yichresu es rosh Sheva ben Bichri v'ashlichu el Yoav v'takab b'shofar v'yafutzu me'al ha'ir ish lo alav. And so they chop off the head of Sheva ben Bichri. They toss it over the wall to Yoav. Yoav does what you do when you want to end a conflict. He blows the shofar. The Yafutzu, Me'al Ha'ir, and they disperse from the city. Ishlo Alav, this is, I think, recalling the beginning of the parak where Sheva ben Bichri says everyone to his tent. Everyone actually now goes back home to their tents. The Yoav, Shav Yushalayim El HaMelech, and Yoav, remember, Yoav was persona non grata. Now Yoav shows up with the head of the rebel to David in Yerushalayim. He goes back to the Melech. The Yoav, and now we're going to get like a little appendix over here just to tell you all of the people in the office of the king. The Yoav, El Kol Hatzava. Yoav is in charge of the whole army of Yisrael. Ben Ayo ben Yoyada al HaKresi al HaPlesi. Ben Ayahu ben Yoyada is on the Kresi and Plesi, either the Urim V'Tumim or the shock troops. V'Adoram al Hamas, and we have Adoram who's in charge of the forced labor. The Yoshaphat ben Achilud Hamazkir. Yoshaphat ben Achilud is the person who chronicles, keeps all the records of the king. Shavaz Sofer, and Shavaz is the scribe, and Sadak and Evyasar are Kohanim. Vegam Ira Ha'iri Haya Kohen LeDavid, and also Ira Ha'iri is a Kohen for David. Okay, now let's backtrack a little over here.
Happy ending.
Yeah, happy ending.
Bad guy punished. End of story.
Okay, so let's first try to deal with the death of Amasa.
Is he alone?
What's that?
Is he alone
Amasa?
when they met at the?
Sounds like it. We don't hear about anybody else with him.
He was supposed to get a lot of troops.
Okay, so let's ask all the questions. We'll ask all the questions, and then we're going to give you my one answer to answer all the questions. None of this I've seen elsewhere, so feel free to take it with as much salt as you'd like. What made Sheva ben Bichri think that he could win where Avshalom failed? It's one thing to say there's unrest, right? Avshalom had a whole. He had the support of the army. He had troops. He had generals. He had advisors. Sheva ben Bichri is a Mr. Nobody who just pipes up after Avshalom's rebellion lost, right? Like, where does he get off thinking that he's going to succeed where Avshalom just failed so spectacularly?
And he can't be a nobody. The fact that everybody listened to him means he's not nobody.
Who listened to him? At the end of the day, he's all by himself in Avel, right? There's no troops. There's no.
Apparently, it says that everyone went after him.
So I think went after him is not necessarily to battle. He didn't call for the death of David. He called for the disregard of David.
Right.
So that's question number one. Question number two is, okay, why Taka didn't Amasa return after 3 days? What was he doing? Three is when we found Amasa, he was not gathering troops in Yehuda. He was told, go to Yehuda. We said Amasa is found in Givon, which is Binyamin territory. What is he doing in Binyamin territory and not in Yehuda territory? Number four, why would Yoav go look for Sheva where he meets Amasa and not elsewhere? In other words, David charges Avishai and Yoav to go get Sheva ben Bichri. So why aren't they looking for Sheva ben Bichri? Why are they meeting up with Amasa? Are they going to Givon to look for Sheva ben Bichri? He's in Avel. Why would they go to Givon of all places to look for Amasa? Okay, question number 5 is probably most perplexing. Why does Yoav kill Amasa? And so the way he killed him, this is, I think, the most critical point. Yoav does not kill Amasa in battle. He kills Amasa in a way that, to me, reads as very contrived. If you're Yoav and you're planning to go to Givon to fight Sheva ben Bichri and all of his men, the last thing you do is gird your sword in a way that it will fall out. Right? Yoav is a very smart, cunning guy. He didn't just accidentally I mistied my. He did this all very intentionally so that the sword will fall out and he won't pay attention and all. So he was planning on killing somebody through stealth, not through force, right? So how does that work? If he's planning on meeting up with Sheva ben Bichri, which is ostensibly why he's going there, he's not going to kill Sheva ben Bichri through a trick of, let me give you a hug. They're going to go at it in a duel, right? There's going to be a fight. This was a planned deception versus a brute force.
Right.
what was Yoav's plan? How did this whole thing play out?
He killed Avner the same kind of way.
Right. But Avner thought that they were on the same team. Avner had made peace with David and had no reason to assume that there was conflict. So whoever.
Neither does Amasa.
But that's what I'm saying. So in other words, what you're saying is Yoav planned to meet up with Amasa, not planned to meet up with Sheva ben Bichri.
Right.
So how does Yoav know that Amasa is in Givon, the Binyamin territory, and not in the Yehuda territory? And
my question is, why doesn't Amasa suspect Yoav after he knows what happened to Avner? They're both, from Shaul's team,
right?
King Shaul.
Okay.
So why is he like, oh, everything's awesome now? Like, why isn't he got his guard up?
Okay. Last question. Why did Yoav treat Amasa's body so poorly, even worse than Avshalom's? Okay. My answer to all of these questions is as follows. Amasa was on the other side. Amasa was in cahoots with Sheva ben Bichri. If Amasa is in cahoots with Sheva ben Bichri, we can answer all of our questions. Question number one, why did Sheva ben Bichri feel like he was going to be successful? Because he has a man on the inside, and he has the man. He has David's general on his side.
He's the head.
Right. Question number two, why didn't Amasa return after 3 days' time? Because he had no interest in returning. He was going to rile the troops for Sheva ben Bichri. That's what he's doing in Givon, in Binyamin territory. He's amassing troops for the enemy, not for David. Why is Avishai and Yoav going to Givon? Because that's where
they know what's
going on. Where Amasa is. They're planning to kill Amasa. They're not planning to kill Sheva ben Bichri. The Yoav's plan is I'm going to trick this person, so it must be the person I'm going to.
Yoav is onto him, but
exactly.
But Amasa doesn't know that Yoav.
Correct. And that's why Yoav treats Amasa's body so poorly, because he's in the middle of war. When Yoav was fighting Avshalom's troops, Yoav didn't stop and bury every Jew that he killed. He's in the middle of war, right? There's no expectation of kavod hameis in the middle of war.
Shocking.
Why? Because the only people that know that they're at war with Amasa are Yoav and Avishai. Yoav's troops, he can't let them in on the story. Oh, by the way, guys, we're going to surprise this. They have no idea what's flying. Yoav knows what's flying. So he kills the enemy, leaves the enemy the same way you leave any other enemy in the middle of war, and then he proceeds to finish the war. Once the war is finished, he can go back and bury the Jewish bodies. That is, again, that's my own take on that whole story.
Plausible.
Yoav to move Amasa as
as the head of the army.
I think we wanted to kill him for that reason also.
Yeah, I mean, right. But they've got an old grudge.
Right.
Nobody talks about the old grudge.
Okay. Last point to consider. This whole story with Sheva ben Bichri and the wise woman. There's a halachic problem over here. When troops surround a city and say, "Give us one Jew or we'll kill all of you," what's the halacha?
I thought the halacha is you're allowed to give if they name it.
Specific Jew.
So if it's a specific Jew, so then you are. The only question here is, well, okay. Let me, instead of getting ahead of myself, let's read.
It's also the king. Is that different than when?
So that's an excellent point. So there's a Gemara in the Yerushalmi in Trumos. This is 8:4, which says as follows. Tanisios b'nei Adam shahayu mahalchim b'derech ufagu lahem goyim v'amru tnu lanu echa mikem. Give us one of you, says the goyim, v'naharogo so, and we will kill him. V'im lav, and if not, harei anu hargim es kulchem. We're going to kill all of you, says the goyim. Afilu kula neharogim. Even if they all have to be killed, al yimsru nefesh achas misrael. You cannot give up one life, one Jewish life, in exchange for everybody else. But Yiyachdu lahen echad kegon Sheva ben Bichri. But if they identify one by name, like Sheva ben Bichri, then Yamasru also, then you can give them over al yaharegu, and they don't all need to be killed. Amar Rishon ben Lakish v'hu shehei chayiv misa. He has to be chayiv misa k'Sheva ben Bichri. Well, wait a minute. How do I know that he's chayiv misa? He didn't go to Beis Din. Answer: he's a mara b'malchus. Right? That's what Yoav. In fact, we'll get to it later. There's a Gemara where Shlomo is taking Yoav to Din, and he's saying, Yoav, you're chayiv misa because you killed all of these people, including
Avner.
No, Amasa. So Yoav says Amasa was chayiv misa because he's also mar b'malchus. The king says, show up in 3 days. You don't show up in 3 days, you're chayiv misa. We're going to get to that in 1 second, how they kind of get out of Yoav's argument. So if he's chayiv misa keshev ben bichri, then you can give him over. Rabbi Yochanan Amar af al pi she'eno chayiv misa keshev ben bichri. Even if he's not chayiv misa like shev ben bichri, if they identify one, then you can give him over. Ula bar koshev tav ate malchuse. So there was actually a story. There was a Jew named Ula, and the crown, the Romans wanted him dead. Arak va'azel le lelud. He goes and runs away to the town of Lud. Gabe Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi. Asun va'akvu midinta. So they come and they're trying to bring this guy Ula to din. Amru lahen ein in leis asun yahavun le lan ana machridim midinta. So basically, Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi hands him over. Salak abe Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi upaisua v'heviu lon v'have Eliyahu zachar latov yolef mizgale alohi v'lo isgale. So after Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi gives up this guy Ula, Eliyahu Hanavi, who used to go visit him, stops revealing himself to him. V'tzam kamatzomim, and he fasts a bunch of fasts. V'izgale alone, and he appears to him. Amar le limsorus anin isgale. I'm supposed to show up to someone who gives a Jew over to the government. Amarle v'lo mishnas. You see, didn't I do what the halacha is? Amarle the zu mishnas chasidim. That's the halacha, but that's not the halacha for chasidim like you. You should really go lifnim mishuras hadin.
That's hard to understand.
That's why.
What does that mean in this context? Meaning, like, you should have let everyone die not give the. Like, how is that lifnim mishuras hadin? Like, hey, you guys all got to sacrifice your lives because I'm such a chassid.
Exactly.
Like, sorry, guys.
Or it is, let someone else do that. You had to be the guy that raised his hand and said, I'll hand over Ula.
If you're the community leader, okay, you can't, like, pawn it off on somebody else.
I hear.
Look, I'm a huge fan of Eliyahu Navi. I just don't understand the Gemara.
Right.
You know, like, I hear what he's saying, like, but what is he saying to do? Right. You know?
So this whole idea is actually learned out from the Mishnayos in Trumos. Like, why is this story in Trumos? It's learned out from, if you have a bunch of Truma, that's Kodesh, and someone says, give me one of your chalos of Truma, and that I can be matama it, or I'll be matama all of them. Are you allowed to give up one? Or I'm telling you, it's Mishnah and Trumos 8, 11, and 12. It's worth seeing inside. That is
right. The only other thing that I could think of, by the way, was Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi.
Yeah,
the guy who cheated death and took his knife.
Yes,
right. Heavy hitter.
Yes,
it's like maybe Eliyahu Navi said you should have offered to the Romans yourself in exchange.
That's interesting.
That's the only thing I can think of. Like, hey, listen, I'm gonna offer myself and let this guy go free. Like, maybe that was the move. I don't know.
Okay, so we unofficially finished Sefer Shmuel. The last 4 prakim are an appendix and are not in chronological order. We're going to talk about the whole structure of that, please God, next time. Okay, Icon. This is the end, beautiful friend. Thank you for joining us on our journey of learning, and I hope you will tune in for another episode soon, Mirz Hashem. Be well.